To find out, Michael is about to observe the replication of one of the most controversial experiments in history. In 1961, social psychologist Stanley Milgram devised a test to see if ordinary law-abiding people would give a stranger a lethal electric shock in the name of science. Twelve members of the public arrive for what they think is a memory test. They're introduced to another person who they believe is another volunteer.
I'm Nick.
He's really an actor.
I'm Professor Lawrence.
As is the professor who'll be running the test.
Do you know what we're doing today?
Not specifically.
The volunteers are also unaware that they're being filmed. Social psychologist Dr. Clifford Stott will be monitoring their responses.
We're conducting an experiment into learning and behaviour.
The actor who's acting as the professor comes in and talks to the two participants to try and convince them that what's actually happening is this scientific study of memory rather than actually what it is, which is a scientific study of obedience to authority.
The professor reveals that the experiment will involve a form of punishment.
The punishment we've chosen to use is electric shock. It's right. Negative reinforcement.
Each participant is given a specific role within the experiment.
So I'm asking one of you to be a teacher and one of you to be a learner.
The learner receives the shocks. The teacher applies them.
Now, how do they decide who's the victim and who's the teacher?
Well, that's done through a lottery, so they draw lots.
And how does that work out? Teacher?
Of course, it's fixed, so the actual participant always ends up being the teacher.
So you must be teacher.
Okay.
The subject observes the learner being strapped to the electric shock device.
Teacher, as he's called, gets to see all this. He gets to see that the man is restrained, can't move in the chair.
And I think this is where the procedure starts to get really interesting, because it's now the teacher begins to realise the potential consequences of what's going on.
Now, how will I know how much pain he's feeling? Sorry, Nick.
Well,
You won't. That's not really the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is to see how he learns. So this is the shock generator.
The teacher is then taken next door and shown the generator,
I'd like to sit down there and just make yourself comfortable.
which goes from 15 all the way up to a lethal 450 volts. That's almost twice the mains voltage in the UK.
So you read those things.
The teachers are given a list of word pairs, which the learner is expected to memorize. Each time the learner gets a multiple choice question wrong, the teacher is told to increase the voltage of the shock.
And then just do that.
I'm going to give you a little shock so you can see what it feels like.
To reinforce the subject's belief that the generator is real,
And
they are given a 45-volt shock.
I'm scared.
don't get scared, all right? Here we go.
Okay, yeah.
Significant?
Yeah, barely.
Right, okay.
Not enough to kill me just yet, so that's okay.
When the procedure continues, there's an awareness clearly in the mind of the teacher that there is a potential for the victim to actually be experiencing quite high levels of pain.
Yellow, flour, strong, coffee.
The point of Milgram's experiment is to see if the teachers will call a stop to the test, or obey the professor and inflict extremely painful shocks. Belief that they're advancing science.
Please continue.
That was correct. Fast. Is it A, train, B, car, C, aeroplane, D, journey? Sorry, it's 195. If that's him shouting, I can't go on. Sorry.
Well, the thing is that the shocks do involve pain, but the experiment requires that you continue, so please go on.
There is no permanent tissue damage. That's the important
Sorry?
thing. There is no permanent tissue damage.
I know, but I really don't want to. I don't want to give pain like this.
Please just continue.
Okay, Nick. If you're happy to continue, we'll carry on.
What the participants don't know is that the learner hasn't been receiving any shocks at all.
Let me out! Let me out of here! Let me out!
His responses are being played on a pre-recorded CD.
Stop! Let me out of here! Let me out of here! Let me out!
When I get to intense shock, and then extreme intensity shock, and then dangerous severe shock, I need to stop, really, don't I?
Well, the experiment
Requires that you continue.
What about in dangerous severe shock, and then the XXX?
Well,
Please continue. Just continue the experiment. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The participant here deferring to the professor,
Yes.
and that deferring to the professor carries with it a diffusion of responsibility. The responsibility for this is not entirely hers, so much as it is to the authority figure that resides with her in the room.
We're on danger now,
Yeah.
but you say it won't be really dangerous to him.
There's no lasting tissue damage.
Okay. And he signed his form and everything, didn't he? He signed his form and everything, didn't he, to say he was okay with
yes.
it? Okay. Okay. Paper A, cup B, wall.
It was scary ghosts. That's incorrect. 225 volts.
Stop! Let me out of here! Let me out of here! Let me out!
Number 3.
I mean, it's a classic example of what Milgram showed. Somebody who, at face value, poses no threat to anybody, can, in these kinds of circumstances, proceed to the point of inflicting severe levels of pain.
Is it A, cup, B, wall, C, aeroplane, or D, lampshade?
You have to treat the absence of response as a wrong answer and just continue the procedure.
Okay, no response is wrong answer. 390 volts.
No sound.
So now he's gone silent. So after the
Number 4.
protest from the learner in the other room, the idea is now that the learner goes silent, so potentially there is the idea that these shocks have actually either rendered the learner unconscious or possibly even killed them.
C, chain, or D, bicycle. We killed him.
It was not responding, so that it counts as a wrong answer.
Okay. And wrong answer again. 405 volts.
incorrect. 225.
Stop! Let me out of here! Let me out of here! Let me out!
I'm really not sure if I'm happy to continue doing this with him. He really sounds like he's in a lot of pain.
Well, the experiment requires that you go on.
Yeah, I know, but I don't really take any pleasure in putting that through a human being's arm.
No, but this is an experiment. It's essential that you continue.
Where did I get to? Number 3.
Oh, interesting.
Very interesting. He was all for chucking it in, but
Yeah, the prompts drove him back to the task. I think it was interesting that that second prompt talks about how essential it is for him to continue. It's essential that you continue. And I think that draws on that sense of obligation to the wider scientific project.
because a scientist doesn't have any coercive power, can't force you to do anything.
Well, I think that's interesting about how this paradigm works and why this paradigm works, is that the influence is ideological. It's about what they believe science to be, that science is a positive product. It produces beneficial findings and knowledge for society that are helpful to society. So there's that sense of science as providing some kind of system for good.
But is the power of authority and the belief that the scientific experiment is being conducted for the greater good, enough to persuade the participants to go all the way to the end and deliver the fatal 450-volt shock.
You want me to carry on?
Yes, please continue.
Do we have to do this?
The experiment requires that you continue.
Yeah, I'm going to have to treat that as an incorrect answer, and it's 450 volts.
Thank you.
No answer incorrect, 450 volts.
That is incorrect. I have to give you 450 volts.
450 volts. 450 volts.
9 out of the 12 participants went all the way to the end.
450 volts.
In Milgram's original experiment, the majority, over 65% of people, went to 450 volts.
That's it. You've gone to the end of the experiment. Thank you very much.
You looked as if you were under some stress.
Oh, did you see me?
I could see you.
Where were you?
There's a camera in there.
Okay.
You looked as if you were under some stress.
I found it quite stressful, yeah. Yeah, I did.
But you went on.
I did, yeah. Because the man behind me said that it wasn't going to damage him long term, so...
So if by chance you had hurt Nick, whose responsibility would that have been?
Well, in the eyes of the law it would have been my fault, and morally it would have been my fault. I could have argued that I was following a procedure laid out for an experiment, perhaps tried to blame science, but in reality it would have been me pressing buttons.
And even with the burden of the knowledge that morally you might have been responsible for a man's death, you went on?
Not entirely pleased about that, but I did, yeah.
How did you interpret Nick's silence after about 370 volts?
I don't know, I didn't actually properly think about it. Probably, maybe I probably should have, but I didn't think about it that much. So my job was to read the list, so...
The whole thing, you know...
Philip was one of the 3 who refused to complete the test.
But you were involved in an important scientific experiment, and the professor was telling you to go on. Why did you disobey?
It sounds a little bit like the Nazis in Second World War Germany. It wasn't me, Goff. You know, I was told to do it.
The majority of people go all the way.
That's scary.
To 450 volts.
I find that scary.
But most shocking of all was to see normal people like me apparently inflict horrific torture on others. Evidently, we can convince ourselves, in certain circumstances, that violence is absolutely justified. When I started to look into this, I thought of violence as something that other people did. And now I see for the first time that it's not some malevolent force out there. It's very much in us. In you, in me, in every one of us.
That I do feel that there are 2 types of laws. One is a just law and one is an unjust law. I think we all have moral obligations to obey just laws. On the other hand, I think we have moral obligations to disobey unjust laws, because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. I think the distinction here is that when one breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust, he must do it openly, he must do it cheerfully, he must do it lovingly, he must do it civilly, not uncivilly, and he must do it with a willingness to accept the penalty. And any man who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and willingly accepts the penalty by staying in jail in order to arouse the conscience of the community on the injustice of the law is at that moment expressing the very highest respect for law.